As you can see, it's a beautiful snowy day. What better time to purchase a smoker? This is a Master Forge purchased from Lowe's. It cost $149. We'll be taking it inside, doing a setup on it, doing some reviews, and giving its first burn-in. As you can see here, the unit is nicely packed, cushioned on all sides so to prevent any damage. And the first thing you see on top is the instruction manual. Master Forge did a nice job of packing it. Let's take it apart and put it together. The first thing we did upon opening the box was to take out the instruction manual and to read it. They have very detailed instructions on how to put this unit together. There is a nice exploded view of all the parts, and the only thing you need to put this together is a Phillips screwdriver, a wrench, and a pliers. Now, along with the instruction manual, there was a flyer, a little piece of paper included. Apparently, this information never made into the instruction book. This shows you how to put the battery, place the battery into the igniter. Very, very simple. I'll go into this later on how to do it, but I also recommend when you're not using the unit in the off-season, always take the battery out of the unit so it does not corrode. But this flyer looks like it was included as an afterthought with the packaging. After taking the unit out of the shipping container, you can see that all the parts you need for assembly are nice and neatly packed inside the smoker itself for assembly. The first box that I took apart contained the actually burner section, which also included the smokestack and the temperature gauge for the front panel. The next part I took apart, the box I took apart, was the legs, the handles, and the smoker assembly. And the third box I took apart contained the tray for water, the handles, the grilling racks, and the bubble wrapped hardware. Very simple, very nicely contained. The first thing they need you to do by the instructions is to assemble the legs. The hardware comes bubble packed in a wrapper, and like any other bubble packed wrapper, you have to take caution while taking the bubble wrapping apart with a screwdriver or knife not to cut yourself. This is standard. It's an inexpensive way of wrapping the hardware, although you do have to have some safety sense when taking the hardware out of the wrapping. Prior to doing any of the assembly, I took some of the packing material that came along in the carton, placed it on the ground, and flipped the unit over to start the assembly of the legs. The reason I did this is to stop any scratching or marring of the surfaces during the assembly process. The first step in the process is putting it together is to install the four legs. The legs use a simple 1/4-20 bolt supplied Phillips head. Screw them into the amounts that are already provided. It takes 3 screws per leg, and very simple, very easy. I've just completed putting together the 4 legs, the assembly, with the 12 bolts that they came supplied. The only issue I see at this point is the strength of these legs. I think that in a later video I might provide some instructions how to put some cross members in to strengthen the legs for normal use. The next step is to install the burner assembly. I put in the screws, the bolts that were supplied. There are 3 of them on the outside and 1 on the inside. What I normally do when securing any kind of bolt is I will loosely secure the unit first, then go around in a clockwise or counterclockwise fashion and tighten everything down. I like to make sure everything is aligned first in a loose situation, and then do the tightening as not to misalign any of the unit. Very simple. In this next step, I am inserting the handles, putting it together handles. I like to hand tighten all of the bolts prior to screwing and actually tightening them down. This makes sure that I do not strip any of the threads in the process. So I like to go around in a clockwise or counterclockwise motion after everything is hand tightened and secure the bolts to the unit. Repeat it until everything is nicely secure. Here I am installing the door locking brackets. The nice thing about these brackets are there's room enough for play that at a later time, if you need to readjust the door for tightness and fitting, the unit has enough play in it to do so. So as I said before, I go in, tighten once and twice. Next, I am mounting the door handles. Go right through the door and securing it with the spring clip provided. Mount the spring clip and secure that with a pliers. After we mounted the door handles, next we install smoker box, the water tray, and the meat racks. And here I am installing the thermostat in the front with the 2 flange washers provided. To prevent smoke from leaking out of the doors, Lowe's sells a 3/8 inch rope gasket that can be easily applied to the door. First thing I did was to remove the doors from the body of the unit and then apply the glue that it comes with the package, a liberal amount along the rail of the open door. After you get done applying the glue to the side of the door, let it sit for about 10-15 minutes to set up. After we take care of the glue and it is tacky for a while, we set our rope into place, lightly tack it onto the glue, and trim where they join with a scissors. After you mount the gasket to the outside of the door, as shown here, put a piece of paper over the front of the door and close the door on the paper, lock it, and leave it sit for about 2 hours. What this is going to do is seal the gasket onto the door. Now, one thing you have to notice is that in the instruction book, they didn't include the insertion of the battery for the igniter. They gave you a separate little flyer that came along with the unit to insert the battery. All you have to do to insert the battery is to unscrew the mount, the actual plug, insert the battery, negative side goes in, positive side goes out. Now, one thing you have to know, these plastic plugs are very fragile. So when you put it in, replace it, be very careful how you thread it. If you misthread it, you'll have problems. You insert the battery, and you hear the click. It works. Okay, it's been 2 hours. The gaskets are now set well into place. And I want to review why I chose the Master Forge. In my local area, we have Home Depot and we have a Lowe's. I purchased the Master Forge from Lowe's. It was $149. Over at Home Depot, the unit that I was looking at over there was the Brinkman. Brinkman was also $149. So the prices were the same. What was the deciding factor on the two units are, number one, the doors themselves. The door on the Master Forge has a locking mechanism. You can actually secure the door and lock it. On the Brinkman, it only had a magnetic clip, similar that you would find on your kitchen doors. I didn't felt that the magnetic clip was strong enough. The unit here, the Master Forge, gave me the ability of putting in a nice gasket to prevent smoke from leaking out. I don't really feel that the door on the Brinkman could do that because there was no lip. It was a straight flush door, and putting in a gasket would have been a very difficult task. It would have been it would not be neat. Okay, now let's look at the trays. The trays on the Master Forge are nice square trays. The Brinkman were rounded. I felt that this gave you a better surface area. The difference between the two units is about 3,000 BTUs. I believe this one is 15,000 BTUs. The Brinkman was 12,000 BTUs. Why that might not sound like a lot during the process of heating up the wood to get your smoke going, a couple thousand BTUs will make it a little quicker. The smoker box itself on this unit is actually a smoker box. It has a lid on top of it. The Brinkman had a pan, a dish similar to what this unit uses for water, but it was just a pan to throw your chips into, similar to like a miner's pan. I didn't think that the quality of the pan was anywhere near what they give you on the Master Forge. Now, total with the gasket kit, you have to buy two on, one for the top and the bottom, and the unit itself, it came up to $172. The gasket kits you had to buy extra, etc. So you're putting a little bit more money into the unit, but I feel you're getting a better unit. While the Brinkman might be a very fine unit and work very similarly, I just thought for my hard-earned dollar that the Master Forge was the way to go. Here's one last look at the unit, totally assembled and ready to go out for its first smoking. One thing that bothered me when I purchased this, though, I should say the only thing that bothered me when I purchased this, was the fact that they did not give you a cover. From what I understand out there, they just don't give you a cover with these units. So I'm going to have to go back to Lowe's or Home Depot, whatever, and buy a cover for $10 to put over this thing. I mean, if I probably buy one that's made for it, it'll probably cost me $30 or $40. But you can buy a generic cover for any of the other smoker units for $10. That is the only thing that I feel that should have been included with the kit. I'm seasoning the unit now. As you can see, I have a nice head of smoke coming out of the unit. The unit's been on about 15 minutes now. First thing I did is I started off with attaching the fuel supply, soaping up the lines, making sure there was no leaks, and hitting the igniter. I got it up to about 300 degrees, turned it down a little bit, and you can see by the temperature I'm about 250, and we got a nice head of smoke going so far. Very happy with the unit.